I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be, You Stink of Fear. Well, I've got 3 emails that I'm going to go through with you today. Obviously, with the focus on fear and mindsets and beliefs. Like the first email that I'm going to go through here, we're going to go, just some of the sentences that the guy puts into his email tells you everything about his state of mind and what he's focusing on. And it's pretty obvious why he's not having a lot of results. But before we get into the first email, I got a quote that I wrote that I want to share before we go through the emails. And it says, Michelangelo once said that genius is eternal patience. Good quote. I heard that the other day and I was just like, I was blown away by that. It's so true. It's like everything that you do in your life, you've got to be diligent with, you've got to be patient, whether it's working out and taking care of your body, getting in great shape, even going from eating a really unhealthy diet to a really healthy diet. It's the type of thing that takes a long time, many months in most cases, to make the transition from the old way of eating to the new way of eating, and then to really see the results in your body and how you feel and see it show up in your skin. Same thing with starting a business. Oftentimes it's many, many years, and the most successful entrepreneurs, they think in terms of decade. They don't think in terms of days, weeks, months, or even hours. It's the long haul, the big picture of why they're doing what they're doing. Anything in life worth doing takes time. And you look at Michelangelo and like what he did with the Sistine Chapel, and he took his time. He wanted to get things absolutely perfect, meaning when he was done painting something or sculpting something or whatever it was that he happened to be doing art-wise, he was giving it his absolute best. The absolute best that he could possibly do. And sometimes that might have meant if he painted something and it didn't look just right, that he'd go back and paint over it and paint it again just to get the right effect with the right colors and the right lines that he was looking for. And when I heard that quote the other day, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. It's such a great quote. Genius is eternal patience. So let me read the rest of the paragraph that I wrote. It says, genius is having the patience, care, diligence, and love to spend whatever time is necessary to perfect yourself, your work, and your life. It's a patient and relentless pursuit of perfection. If you pursue perfection, you may just reach excellence, as Vince Lombardi suggested. See yourself and your life as a work in progress. Work at overcoming your weaknesses and pushing past your fears. Success in the life you dream of is way beyond your weaknesses, is way beyond what your weaknesses and fears say you currently are and are capable of in the future. If what you want is more emotionally compelling and worth chasing than what you fear, you can and must take action to make it a reality. Otherwise, you're just another member of the herd with wishes and excuses, not goals. A goal without a plan to achieve it is simply a wish. I got one other really great quote. I may have read this one before, but it's so powerful, and it's from Epictetus, and that's a couple thousand years ago. He said, no person is free who is not master of himself. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that every single video that I've ever done, YouTube video, every video coaching newsletter that is, the very end of it I have a quote by Lao Tzu. And it says, mastering others is strength, but mastering yourself makes you fearless. Because the important thing is you got to get to a place in life where you're unattached to the things that you want. In other words, you can take it or leave it. You really like it to happen, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't uncenter you. If you're interacting with a woman, I'd really like it if she'd want to go out with me. But if she doesn't, hey, it's her loss. She just missed out on the most awesome dude that she's ever going to meet. You got to feel that way. You got to get to a place where you think from that place. You don't want to be in a place where you're full of fear. If you're trying to raise capital for a startup of yours, you're trying to get investors in, you're not going to get the first person usually. You got to have a take it or leave it kind of attitude. You've got to have the attitude that you're bringing some serious value to the table. And the only way you and your value are going to stick around is if other people can see the value in what you have. Because if they don't see the value in what you have, then you need to keep on moving, keep circulating, instead of doing what the average person does, which is sitting there going, why didn't they like me? Why didn't they want to invest in my company? Why didn't they give me that job? Why didn't that woman go out with me? Why didn't she sleep with me? Why did she break up with me? And asking all kinds of disempowering types of questions like that. So let's go ahead and get into this guy's email. And he says, hey coach, I've read your book about 5 times and I've watched a lot of your videos, but I've never seen you address my main question, which is, listen to what he says here. How do I get women to actually give me the chance to take them out on a date and perceive me as the damn good catch that I am? How do I get women to actually give me the chance to take them out on a date and perceive me as the damn good catch that I am? Now, what kind of relationship do you think this man has with women? Do you think women are interacting with him on a basis where he feels like an equal? Or is there a little bit of an overtone that he's kind of putting women on a pedestal? In other words, treating them a little bit like a celebrity. In other words, they're better than I am. For some reason, they just don't pay attention to me. There's something wrong with me. That's what the question presupposes. This tells you everything about his mindset. I really wouldn't need to read further than that. And so this guy obviously has some strong beliefs around his experience. But one of the biggest things I suggest for guys, especially guys that come to me and are like, I'm having a hard time getting fundraisers, I'm having a hard time getting dates. Well, the first things, the homework assignment, I say, great. For the next 30 days, I want you to ask out 100 different women. I want you to approach and ask out 100 different women on a date. Usually it's like, that's 25 a week. It's like, you need to go to the mall, you need to go to a trade show, a public place, you need to go somewhere where you're going to encounter that many potential dates where you can interact with those numbers. Every single time when I've given that homework assignment to a guy, he comes back, usually without fail, he's gotten laid at least 2 to 3 times. Just because it's like, even if you fuck up the first 50, just maybe it takes you 50 just to warm up. You got to look at it that way. Because this particular guy here, the perception is that women are separate from me. In other words, I don't have enough value to bring to the table, and therefore I don't deserve to be in their presence. Well, that just tells me this guy really hasn't spent a lot of time interacting with women. He's kind of like somebody at the zoo. He still kind of sees women as like these strange creatures he sees at the zoo, instead of just an equal, another person that has bad breath, whose farts stink, who gets BO if she doesn't take a shower. All those things. And so he says, because for some reason that I can't figure out, they never really give me signs of attraction, and they give me wishy-washy answers when I confidently ask them out. You've only asked out a handful of women, dude. He says, see, I know and I believe I'm a good catch. Great. Well, if you really believe that, you would act in a way that is congruent with that statement. Your first statement that I read was not congruent with that. I'm a good catch. Well, you don't talk like a guy who believes himself to be a great catch. Your whole frame of mind is, I can't get women to pay attention to me. For some reason, they don't want to pay attention to me. For some reason, I'm not good enough for them. That's your perspective. That's your model of the world. That's the way, that's the lens that you look at things. So what do you think the vibe is when you do interact with women that you're giving off? I'm not worthy. You're going to probably reject me like all the rest of the other ones have. Women can sense this. They can feel. They can look right at you, and before you even open your mouth, you've already lost. Your mindset's not helping you. He says, in fact, I know I'm just as damn good as any other guy out there. Well, if you really believe that, you'd be acting in accordance with that belief. But it's like you're trying to psych yourself out. Like, I really believe I'm a catch, Corey, but you're not acting like a guy, and you're not talking like a guy who believes he's a catch. He says, I take really good care of myself, and I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm confident, and I have a good sense of fashion. I'm not a wuss, I'm not a pushover. I don't pursue or chase after women, but still they don't seem to care all about that. It's like I don't know what more they could want from a guy, especially when I know I'm one of the best catches out there. Well, you're talking about how awesome you say you think you are, but I don't hear a lot about action. I don't hear any examples of things that women are saying to you when you ask them out on dates. He says, I kind of feel like it's time for women to start putting in some effort as well. Remember, no one will ever do or say anything that is in direct reflection of how they feel about themselves in a moment. I feel like it's time for women to start putting in some effort as well. Well, that tells me more than likely you're probably not putting in enough effort yourself. Because to you, the women should be doing all the work. Something wrong with them. It's nothing I'm doing. And this is, when I get emails from guys like this, or I start talking to guys, and they're like, hey, I'm doing everything you teach, Corey, but I'm just not getting any results. I'm like, really? And I start, well, when was the last time you talked to her? When was the last time you asked a girl on a date? Long pause. Well, that was a few weeks ago. All right, in the past year, how many women have you asked out? Oh, well, 5. What do you expect? You're so full of fear. It's like you may have to talk to ask out 30, 40, 50 women before you get to the point where you really don't give a fuck anymore. Because it's a numbers game. You got to do it to the point where you're bored of it. You're tired of it. It doesn't bother you. It's like ordering a fucking Happy Meal at McDonald's or something, or ordering a Big Mac, or some fast food. Going through a drive-through window. It should be that. It should be the point where you're that comfortable with it. And I can tell you're not that comfortable with it because you don't talk like a guy who's comfortable with it. It's really not a big fucking deal. But if you don't practice it, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to be full of fear. He says, I want there to be a mutual attraction, but yet I can never seem to find a woman who's mutually attracted to me since they never give me any indication or signs of attraction. He says also, when I'm interacting with women, they'll say things like, you're so funny and a real cool guy, but for some reason the interactions never actually translate into dates. I just don't get it, Corey. I feel like I should be given chances and getting dates because I know I deserve results. Well, how many women are you talking to? How many women are you actually asking out on dates? What are you actually saying to them on dates? What are they actually saying to you? You give me one thing here. If you notice, most of the time when I go through a guy's email, he gives a detailed instructions on exactly what transpired. What he said, what she said, and you're telling me none of that. Why? Because it's not happening. There's nothing going on. You're not doing anything except complaining about your situation. But if you're not taking action, then it's not going to get better. He says, I feel like I've done everything I could possibly do, and I still don't have any results for all of my hard work over the years. Your hard work of doing what? He said, I don't chase after or pursue women. What I'm talking about is results. See, we all want results at some point, even you. How would you feel if after all these years of learning about attraction, and you never had any results? Notice how you just talked about learning about attraction. Well, what action have you been taking? I don't hear any mention of the actions you're taking. He says, don't you think you would be just a little annoyed and frustrated since you knew that you deserved results? Ah, this is exactly the mindset that you have. You're pissed off at women. What woman in their right mind would want to go out with you when you're in a fucking pissed off, frustrated vibe? You're going to creep them out. They're going to feel that vibe. They're going to feel that anger. They're going to feel that animosity. They're going to feel that frustration. And they're not going to want to be around you. You're going to feel weird and creepy in some way. So what I would do if I were you, the biggest thing that you need to do is you need to stop worrying about dates and who you're sleeping with and all that kind of shit. What you need to do is, first thing is you got to get past, your fear of talking to women. You need to get past the place where you're so focused on what's not working. You got to get to a place where you really don't give a fuck, where it's like breathing. So what I want you to do for the next 30 days, keep a log of this. I want you to ask out, and if you're one of those guys that's watching this, or women for that matter, if you're watching this, and you're like, I don't get enough dates, I want you to ask out 100 people over the next month. If you're a guy, ask out 100 women. If you're a woman, ask out 100 dudes. Just make it happen. Just like I talk about in the book. If you say you read my book 5 times, then you should know exactly what to say to women, and keep a log of it. Ask out 100 women. And if you ask out 100 women, you're going to learn a lot. That's the important thing about taking action. That's what gives you experience. Because if you ask out 100 women, what you're going to notice is some of them just absolutely have no interest in you whatsoever. Attraction is not a choice after all. They don't have a choice in whether they're attracted to you or not. If you're only talking to a handful of women, you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to see that. You literally have to do it dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times to tell a difference. That's one thing I did learn in my 20s, is that even though it wasn't very successful a lot of the time, is that there were some women that just were into me no matter what. And there were others that were kind of, they could take it or leave it either way. And the majority of them were like, they didn't want anything to do with me. That's one thing I did learn. But the problem that I had was I kept talking women out of it. And I will tell you this, even if you have encountered women in the past few years that have liked you, your attitude, the vibe you're giving off, you won't be successful just because of the frame of the mind that you're in. Ask out 100 women over the next month. That's 25 per week. And by the time you get to that 100th one, you're going to be like, this is not a big deal. You will get dates. You will go out on dates. There'll be women that you'll like initially, and you go out on dates, you go, you know what? I really don't think I want to go out with her again, because she'll talk you out of wanting to date her again. You got to have experience. It's the only way you get better. At the end of the day, it's nice to watch videos and pick up on all that stuff. You guys are in those things. But if you're not out there talking to people, it's fucking irrelevant. It is a numbers game. Because it's in talking to the numbers that you realize the truth. And the truth is, attraction is not a choice. There are just some women that like you, but the majority of them are not going to be like that. And there's going to be another good percentage. They're going to kind of be on the fence. They can take it or leave it one way or another. But the ones that really dig you, that really like you, you have to fuck up quite a bit to talk them out of liking you. But if you talk to 100, if you ask out 100 women, you're like, that girl's attractive, I would definitely like to go out with her. I'd definitely like to hook up with her. If you do that, you will start to see the difference. You will start to see the subtle differences between the ones that have attraction to you and those that don't. And the truth is that the majority are not going to be into you. And that's okay. And you realize that just the pickup part, the getting numbers, the setting dates, the first step, it's really just getting through the numbers, getting to the place where you don't care. You can take it or leave it. Because when you do it, when you can see it and you can spot interest versus not having interest, then what will happen is you'll start approaching more women that actually have interest in you, because you'll be able to look right at them and see how they're looking at you. And you'll be able to know right away if you got a shot or not before you even go approach them. You get better with time. You get better with experience. You approach women who are more approachable and who are more open to meeting you. Like I talked about in the video that I did a few years ago, improving your social skills. But if you're not talking to the people, it's like you go to a pickup boot camp. And the guy's like, you got to do exactly what I tell you. And they throw you right in, baptism by fire. They want to see you talking to women. They're going to push your ass. You have to do it. You can't get around that. If you want to set dates, you got to talk to women. So let's get into the second guy's email. He says, hey coach, this may be a tough one for you since it seems a little confusing to me. I've been dating this girl for about 2 months now. I went to her house and we made out, etc. I got around to third base, I guess. She then stopped me and said that she didn't want to have sex until we were more serious. Well, that's her belief. That's her slut alarm going off in her head going, whoa, this is moving a little too fast. And if you knew my book backwards and forwards, you would know that you're encountering resistance. In other words, things are moving too fast. She's bringing up concerns that she has. And then that's when you take the one step back. And you relax, you chill, you ask her questions. When she says... And he says, then she says, and speaking of, where do you see this going? Always be playful. Always be humorous. Always be like you always have the answer. Like you always have a better comeback. Like nothing she can say will diminish you or surprise you, because you've seen it all and you've heard it all. And if you're coming from a humorous place, and she says, where do you see this going? Well, I think for the next few minutes we're probably going to be talking for a little bit, but then I think you're going to find yourself irresistibly drawn to start kissing my lips again, because you're going to really start missing them irresistibly, because after not kissing for a few minutes, you're going to realize how charming I am and how much you want to kiss me again. But where do you see it going? Be fun, be playful, be humorous, don't be serious. That's the whole point. 90% of the time, you're charming James Bond. 10% of the time, you treat her like the bratty little sister. And that's why you use a little bit of humor. Ask her, where do you see it going? And you got to have a take or leave it kind of attitude. This is It's like what Michelangelo talked about. Eternal patience. This is the moment where you practice eternal patience, where in your mind you're like, you know what, it's okay if I don't get laid tonight. I can take it or leave it. I'd really love it, but obviously she's got a concern here. And so listen to what he does next. Instead of being playful and being fun and being charming and getting her to laugh, because remember, if she's laughing, she's feeling good. And on one of the most popular article on my website is the one that's on my homepage. It's called Successfully Deflowering Your Virgin Girlfriend. I know it's a completely fucking outrageous title, and that's exactly why I chose it as a title, because a lot of people read it and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it says that. And they go there and they read it. And it's actually a really beautiful story about how this very thoughtful boyfriend went out of his way to make the first time that he had sex with his girlfriend, who happened to be a virgin, was really special. I mean, the guy jumped through his butt. And afterwards, she was like, thank you for making things my first time so special. She was so appreciative. She'll remember that for the rest of her life. And you have to do that. You've got to follow the things that I talk about in my book. 2 steps forward, 1 step back when you encounter the resistance. But you use humor and you get her to talk. And that guy in that article, or the email that I answered, he had written me 2 or 3 emails prior to that where he was running into the same kind of resistance that you're running into now. And I told him exactly what to focus on. I know in that article itself, if you click on some of those blue links, it'll take you to some of the prior emails and articles that I answered for the guy where I discussed these things. So he says, and here's what his answer when she says, where do you see this going? He says, I answered that I don't want to see anyone else but her, i.e. relationship, and then asked her if she felt comfortable and safe with me. Would James Bond say something like that? Does that presuppose that he's going to get what he wants, or is this a guy that's unsure of how she feels about him? Remember, men should always know. You should be thinking from the end. You should be thinking, of course she feels safe and comfortable with me. Bringing that up, it's like, come on, man, seriously. It's like, what do you think that's going to cause her to focus on? Am I safe and comfortable right now? Do I have a reason not to feel safe and comfortable with this guy right now? Where's the fun? Where's the playfulness? And now it's like, and it was funny, when I first read this, I was laughing because I remember I was in the same position numerous times in my 20s when I was trying to learn this stuff. And, you know, especially like when you're meeting up with a chick and you're trying to hook up with her the first time, you're trying to have a one-night stand, and you get her home, you're at your place, and you start to take her clothes off, and then you encounter resistance. And it's like you really want to get laid because you want to be to go tell your buddies, hey man, I got fucking laid last night. It was great. Yeah, I hooked up with that girl. And so you kind of got that working against you because you're impatient, because you're fearful. Oh my God, it's not going to work out because you've had a few times in the past where it didn't work out. And then you encounter some resistance. You don't really know how to handle it, and instead you go into logic and reason mode. He says which is obviously exactly what this guy did. Instead of being playful and having fun with it, and he got all serious, thinking, oh, I got to fix things right now. Which is totally gets both of them out of the moment and totally in their heads, which is where you don't want to be. He says, so then she says she feels the same way and wanted to make it monogamous. But my real question is this definitely a sign of high attraction, right? I would say yeah. But you haven't made her really feel safe and comfortable to the point where, because in that moment, that's when you just start getting her to talk. And you caress her hair, and you maybe touch her lips every now and then as you're rubbing her arms when she's talking. Because, again, you're there in bed together, maybe partially unclothed or whatever, and you're just talking. Or I should say, she's talking. And you're asking questions, just like I talk about in the book. This is the worst thing. This is where most guys that don't get laid when they're about to, this is where they fuck up. She has some resistance. She has some in sales, this is what we call objections. And so as a salesperson, your job is to handle the objections. And trained salespeople are trained to start asking questions to figure out what are the real objections about the whole thing. And you get her to talk about it. It makes her feel safe and comfortable. And you acknowledge some of those things. And after 5 to 7 minutes of that, or 10 minutes later, you start making out when you're close to each other. And you get a little further each time. So he says, well, my real question is, this is definitely a sign of high interest, which I said yes. He says, then why does she hardly ever contact or text me first? Probably because you're pursuing too much still. And you're too concerned about when it's going to turn into a relationship, and you're too concerned about when is the sex going to happen. You're in that fearful state. It's like, this is exactly how I was in my 20s. I know where you're at, dude. I know what it feels like. I know what you're thinking. I've been there. He says, when I do text her, she responds right away with all those exclamation and smiley face things, though. She doesn't really initiate any verbal contact nor physical contact, but isn't shy away at all on physical contact except for sex. You're doing most of the touching and the initiating of contact. And if you've been following what I teach in my book, you wait for the woman to start touching you, because when she does, then you slowly reciprocate. And it's something as simple, as subtle as just hanging, say you're making dinner together at your place and she puts her arm on your shoulder or she touches your arm. Then you slowly pull her in, kiss her, start making out a little bit, and if she pulls away, you let her go. The idea is it's like the salsa dance back and forth. And some of you, that might be a good thing for you to go and do, is to learn salsa dancing. It's like the back and forth of it all. He says, is she really just old-fashioned conservative? What are your thoughts? Read the book. I talk about it extensively in there, and the problem is you don't know the book well enough. So let's get into the third and final email. This guy says, hey Corey, I've been married almost 20 years to a really hot woman, and we have 4 kids. She also happens to have borderline personality disorder. Bet that sounds like fun. And about 8 years ago, she had an affair with my best friend. You know, there was something that I retweeted. I've got one of those accounts that I follow called like Oddest Facts or something like that. And one of the things that was tweeted out was that 90% of most people have had somebody who at one point was their best friend and they're no longer their best friend. I think everybody's kind of been at that when you think about it, really. And it's so true. And she had an affair with my best friend after she remembered some very bad things that happened to her as a child. She basically lost it. I was not a great husband back then, and I had some anger issues, so in hindsight, I know I pushed her out the door because she did not feel that she could rely on me. She happened to run into him and then started calling him. They only saw each other for about 5 weeks, and she moved out for this time when I found out. Anyway, we went through counseling, and it took a lot of years. But about 2 years ago, we got to the point where we had a decent family set up instead of all the turmoil. Well, that's definitely an improvement. He says, so anyway, about 6 months ago, she decided to go back to work. And in the first few months, she started blowing all of our money on clothes, makeup, jewelry, etc. Separate bank accounts. If you've got a woman that's like that, give her her own bank account. And she can deposit her check in there, and then she can write you a check for whatever her portion of the utilities and stuff happens to be, or the mortgage or whatever. Sometimes you got to do that. If she can't discipline herself and she just blows through your money, put a separate bank account that you use to pay all your bills. Have a personal one for yourself, and have one that you pay your joint bills out of, or it sounds like if you're the responsible one, somebody's got to do it, otherwise she's going to fuck both of your credit up. He says she started getting more distant and her hours have changed to working weekends and nights. And he says everyone who wants to move up has to work these shitty hours, and I've confirmed this. So I pulled away from her and stopped communicating with her. She did try to get my attention, but then I would go back to blowing up her phone, and then she would pull away from me again. I did not realize it until I listened to your videos, and this is how it works, and I needed to keep the mystery. Through all of this, she told my daughter that she thought this young guy at work was hot, and she told me later that she talks to him quite a bit at work. Hey, she's letting you know that if you don't get your shit together, she may be fucking this other guy in the future. That's how women go about it. She's being honest. He says, I'm super paranoid still, and I'm freaking out that she may have had another affair. Well, current events form future trends. If she cheats on you once, if you treat her the same way, guess what? She'll do it again, bro. That's just what you're dealing with. You chose to stay with her. Okay. It's your life, your body, your relationship, your choice. All I can do is point these things out. You have a woman who, when things aren't going well, she's going to cheat. It's the way she is. He says, I'm super paranoid and freaking out that she may have another affair, and I've asked her about this guy many times. He says her borderline personality disorder sometimes looks like an affair, as the actions and are sometimes the same. My question to you is, should I use the same techniques you describe in your videos and let her come to me? Yeah. As sometimes this seems to work and sometimes not. It depends on what you're doing and saying. The whole idea is, if you're dating her and courting her properly, as the weeks go by, she's going to want more and more of your attention and your time. Now, if you're fucking up, it's going to push her away. But if you're vacillating back and forth, in your own words, you admitted this, that as soon as she starts to pursue you, you go right back to over-pursuing. And so that will cause her to be hot and cold. Whereas you wait, she starts pursuing, she starts calling, texting, coming to you, and then you go right back to your bad behavior, you're going to drive her away again. He says, last Friday I decided to try and back off, and I didn't call or text her, and when we saw each other I did not talk much, and I went about doing my own thing for a few days, and finally she jumped on me in bed that night after over a month, and it was awesome. Well, you pretty much answered your own question there, dude. And I understand where you're at, because I was in the same place, and I wrote about this extensively in my book. I was literally like a fucking tennis ball back and forth. It's like sometimes I pursued too much, and she became disinterested. And then I backed off, and she started reaching out to me, but I wasn't making dates and other things. And so sometimes I backed off too much. It really is an art. And like I said, by knowing the book backwards and forwards, you learn to recognize the behaviors and the signs, because women exhibit the same kind of signs. And like I said, this is what you did. You backed off because she was acting like, when women take you for granted, as long as they're not pissed off at you, if you've been pursuing too much and you've been acting needy, then you get focused on your purpose, your mission in life, and you seem to be kind of bored with her, if you will. Then she goes and she gets your attention. You should be planning dates, hanging out, having fun, hooking up together. That's what you should be doing. And when you're away at work or you're apart from each other during the day, there's no reason to be calling her or texting her. And if it has to do something with your kids, then have all that stuff arranged ahead of time so you're not the one reaching out to her. This allows her to come to you. It makes it a lot easier that way. And I talk about this extensively in my book. So as you can see, you got one guy who's basically, from the emails I went through, who's getting like no results, and he's in a really bad state of mind. Plus, it doesn't sound like he's even talking to anybody, because if he did, he'd have all kinds of examples of the type of feedback that he's getting. But since he didn't list any of that in there, it's obvious there ain't any feedback. In the second guy's email, he's got this woman that he's dating, but again, he's learning to find that balance. Learning to take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back when he encounters resistance. And what I would say to the second guy, he just doesn't know the book well enough. And he makes a mistake of going into logic and reason mode when he encounters resistance, which is one of the worst things you can do. And instead of just continuing to be playful and charming and lean back and start asking her questions and getting her to talk about things, instead he got all serious and then nothing happened. Love is playful and it's fun. It's all about having a good time together. That's why I say hang out, have fun, hook up. It's not hang out, have a serious discussion, hook up. It doesn't work that way. The hooking up always comes after having a lot of fun and laughing together and getting close to one another. So if you'd like to get my help personally, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching with yours truly. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the Products tab at the top of your screen, and just follow the instructions for whatever option works best for you. And I will talk to you soon.